Those who are on the front line are actually washing their hair more frequently.
Tong being the prime example, usually never go anywhere near anything like this. But
Harrods, Harvey Nicks, Selfridges are all in the same boat.
If anyone was to re-platform now, they will get a lot more out of their agency.
The beauty brands that we have are predominantly online and they're all flying.
A few of them have moved into making that type of production.
Possibly come Christmas time, things will then drop off.
Did you feel pressure as a brand to do something? Johnstons of Elgin is well known for cashmere. So how has your sourcing been impacted in the short term?
That's come to a grinding halt. So we source our raw fibre predominantly at the moment in Mongolia and China. So we cannot buy raw fibre at the moment. We've just got to be resilient and rely on the stock that we have until we can go back out there. The impact of this will be we will delay our autumn winter launch until later September. We're also going to have a lot of spring summer stock to ship. Partners that we work with who take our stock like Harrods, Harvey Nicks, Selfridges, they're all in the same boat.
You launched a campaign called Send Your Love. So can you tell us about that and how it's been received?
It seemed very odd to us as a family-owned business and a community business to start advertising spring-summer products as we would have normally planned to do. And the only thing that it felt right to do was to say, well, if you can't be with somebody, then you can send your love. And obviously all our products are very luxurious products. We did this as a way of people being able to show that they cared, but we priced the product at a price that had never been seen before. So for us, it wasn't about making a profit. It was about saying to our customers, look, you can send your love, you can show you care, you can snuggle up under a blanket or wear a pair of cashmere socks while everybody's at home. So everybody loved it, and it's something that we've carried on and we've added more products in, and it might actually become the basis of all our kind of gifting.
You're probably 5 or 6 weeks into having your site upgraded to Magento 2.
Yes.
So are you glad you got that out of the way before?
Oh yes. Yeah, we are really glad of the timing of that. The main reason the timing could have been better is because Magento 2's given us a better mobile experience, and I think people are so eager to consume content and to browse and just feel like there's a bit of normality in their life, that we're seeing so many more hits via mobile on the website.
Kevin, I'll bring you in here. So this is an area that you know well. I believe you've been working with brands to move over to Magento 2.
We're in the middle of a big build. Our clients actually have more time to spend checking the site and QCing it. Currently in the UK, the sort of split between Magento 1.9 sites and Magento 2 sites is about 50-50. People seem to have put their head in the sand, going from Magento 1 to a Magento 2 site simply because it is a rebuild, which really worries me actually, considering there's only a few more months till Magento 1
I know.
is supported.
Do you think now poses a good time to re-platform, or just the complexity of it? Does that present different risks in terms of teams not being in the same place?
If anyone was to re-platform now, they will get a lot more out of their agency.
Right.
Than they would do if everyone sat in the same studio, because we're able to deliver a little bit extra because people have sat down and focused a lot more than they are. And we all use collaborative tools anyway to speak and test stuff. So, my stock answer would be there's never a bad time to re-platform.
Mm-hmm. And just on the point really about, projects that you might do during this lockdown, I'll bring in Karen now. So you've worked with brands like Dior, Chester Barry, New and Lingwood across different departments. So buying, merchandising, e-commerce, wholesale, brand development. So, what are the projects that usually get put on the back burner that brands might do well to have a think about doing now?
Well, I think the e-commerce is a very good one actually, because quite often you don't have enough time to really look at it properly, and you get people are trying to do the day job and try to source something new as well. So I mean, I would be looking at taking on projects that you actually can control yourself and that are not dependent on your suppliers. Or so one of those would be, what does the website look like? Does it work? Have we looked at the data recently? Can we make it work better? So that would be one. And then looking forward, I would also be looking at things like sustainability, because we all talk about how we want to do it, but no one ever quite gets around to auditing what we've actually got and where the improvements could be. So that's something else that could be looked at and road mapped out with some goals. And potentially, I think going forward, we're going to probably need smaller teams working harder with better technology that's scalable. So it might be an opportunity for sort of senior managers to actually start looking at that and imagining their business in a slightly different way.
I know many consultants are offering their support now to sort of smaller businesses and growing brands. And I see that you've teamed up with the Lone Design Club. Can you talk a bit about that and why you decided to lend your expertise?
About 15 years ago now, I trained as a small business advisor for creative businesses. They were looking for advisors to help the brands on their website. For those of you that don't know it, it's a great concept, and it allows the brands and fashion designers, the small independents, to meet their potential customers and also to sell through the platform. These designers were asking for additional business support, which is not something that LDC provides. So they reached out to a sort of team of people who could provide that. And
everyone's looking at the resources and the expertise that they have and where they can sort of give back. And I know that Lorna, your business, you've pledged to donate a percentage of your profits to from your Easter sales to the National Emergencies Trust. So did you feel pressure as a brand to do something?
I don't think it was pressure, no. I think for Noughty as a brand, giving support and giving back to our community has always been very much a big part of our brand DNA and our value set. It didn't feel in any way strategic. In fact, quite the opposite. It sort of felt like the only opportunity that we had right now was to help. It was the only option. There are many other ways that we have been supporting our community in the background as well. One thing we wanted to do was actually ask our community where they felt our donation could be best received. It was through really their feedback that we made the decision to donate where we did.
I read somewhere that the sales of premium nail care had gone up because with all the nail bars being closed. But how is hair holding up in comparison?
Sales have really tended to vary according to the category of product. Treatment products, for example, have been really excelling. Things like leave-in conditioners, hair masks. Others include products that help extend the life of hair between washes. Dry shampoos, or whether it be at Noughty, we have a product called a curl primer, which essentially brings life back to curls on second, third, or even fifth day hair. People in lockdown are very much washing their hair less. Those who are on the front line are actually washing their hair more frequently. We found styling products perform less well during this time, obviously because people aren't going out as much, so they're making less effort in terms of actually styling their hair. But any product that's supporting the health of the scalp during these quite stressful times are also performing well.
And Paul, in contrast, you're also in haircare, but for men. So how are you finding sales at the moment?
Well, we're obviously in Sainsbury's and Ocado and Waitrose, and given that they're the only real places still open, thank God we're in there. It's actually been okay. I mean, sales are down as per, it sort of correlates with the footfall going into those stores. So obviously Waitrose are doing sort of one in, one out. So I think people shopping are no longer browsing because they're having to queue for a long time to get in. And it's like, just get the stuff and then get out. So sales are down, I would say about 50%, but then we've seen them correlate with footfall going up again this week. We've got a promotion on and sales have gone back up.
Okay. And sticking with the cosmetics space, I know Claire at Seko, you work with a lot of beauty brands, but you also have, a lot of other businesses outside of your client base that are in that space. So what are you hearing anecdotally about how sales are holding up?
The beauty brands that we have as clients are predominantly online, and they're all flying. I think a lot of people don't want to go to Sainsbury's unless they really have to. So we were seeing some premium brands having increased sales of shampoo because you could buy it online. We thought that makeup would stop performing well, but today's the first day I put makeup on for about 3 weeks, I think. So my colleagues, unfortunately, they had to bear the impact of seeing this without looking. But you got lucky. And we didn't expect to see a drop in that, because obviously people won't be replacing their staples, but people are buying. And I think there's a couple of reasons. One is that even premium and luxury cosmetics are an affordable treat. I think market share has gone up for online retailers for obvious reasons, because most of the shops are closed, and those that aren't closed are selling food or medicine predominantly, and cosmetics is a secondary category, and people are going to those shops for purely cosmetics reasons.
So all of those direct-to-consumer beauty brands,
yeah, they're all absolutely flying, which presents its own challenges. So we're also seeing, interestingly, fulfilling to China from the UK has gone up, and I guess that's because obviously this impact rolled through China a lot earlier, and that compounded with the normal Chinese behaviour of preferring, or in some cases preferring, to shop online for British brands in particular because they're trustworthy.
One of the big things I think for cosmetics brands is that a lot of the manufacturers, they're all trying to make money out of hand sanitizer. Right? I even got asked for an order of like 500,000 units by Sainsbury's. Could I make it for them? And I couldn't, because the supply and demand is so. But literally every cosmetic guy around the UK is trying to make it some way or another.
We work with international distributors for your global markets. So what are you experiencing in non-UK markets?
So we're in Australia and New Zealand in about, I don't know, nearly 2,000 stores down there. And actually demand's gone up, because what they're trying to do is they're panicking about the manufacturing. So they want to get their orders in now, so that they're doing their 3 months on, they've got to do 3 months on the water, get to Australia and New Zealand. So you're really looking at August, July, nearly Christmas time. So they just want the stuff there to be safe. And actually we've got orders more than we can supply. So they're just having to go wait. So but I think that's just a time lag thing. And then possibly come Christmas time, things will then drop off.
I think you just touched on a point there about the logistics of products and, how everything gets shipped and moved around. And I know that there are lots of brands that have been criticised for how they've cancelled stock from their suppliers. But, the argument may be that they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, in that they are, on the one hand, trying to protect their own business and their employees, but on the other hand, they have to look at their relationship with the stock that they've ordered. So, Karen, do you think that's sort of short-sighted of brands, the way that some of them have been treating their suppliers in cancelling stock or having it, but on a reduced cost basis?
I mean, it's hard, isn't it? It's a necessary evil, and if you're fighting for your own survival, you probably got to look at every way to reduce the cash that's going out and maximise the cash that's coming in. But I do think it highlights the kind of inequalities across our supply chains, particularly the value end. But I've spoken to quite a few suppliers recently in the last few days, and most of them have been affected by Europeans cancelling stock. These are factories in Asia. I mean, if we do that and they don't have any manufacturing, then we won't have any supply chains. That said, one or two of them are making PPE in their own countries for their own countries. So, when they can get the fabric for that, because it seems like that's also impossible, that you can't get any PPE fabric anywhere. But where they have got it, quite a few of them have moved into making that type of production, and they're making small orders through their sample rooms. That's my experience.
What I also wanted to ask you, something that actually Melissa touched upon. So, like, how do you think seasonal stock will be affected in the medium term? So when we go onto the high street in September, what are we going to be looking at?
Well, I think we're going to be looking at massive discounts. I mean, everyone has got a lot of fashion inventory, and it's the wrong season, and everyone will have it. Every brand under the sun is not selling as much online as they were through their stores and through their bricks and mortar.
And Claire, on the point of brands and their suppliers and the relationship with the stock that they've ordered, so can you explain the impact on warehousing? Because I know some retailers have cited that that's the issue, that they've got full shops with nothing moving, their warehouses, they're at capacity, so they've got nowhere to put this new stock.
Yeah, so every day since this crisis really started, I've been approached by retailers, people operating on behalf of them, asking me for space. Obviously, anyone who has a wholesale channel which ends up in retail, or a retail channel themselves, is not able to move their stock out. And of course, even if they were able to cancel, they couldn't cancel everything, and a lot of stuff was on the water or in the air. So yeah, definitely warehouses have become very full up, and the solutions to that is to off-site storage, and that's now becoming quite full up, although it still can be found. And now we're seeing like sort of newer solutions coming through, which is, for example, I saw one yesterday, which is container stacking. So rather than incurring demurrage at the port, where you can't get the stock out of the port and into a warehouse, you bring the container inland somewhere and you park it with full of stuff, somewhere secure, until that space is freed up. But it's basically, it's becoming, not gridlocked yet, but it is becoming an issue, and everybody is scrambling for what space is available.
And just on what it's like for you doing, in 3PL, I know there's been a lot of press reports about warehouses and being mindful of social distancing for the teams that work in them. So what's it been like for you over the past weeks?
We've had to change, and we did very, very quickly change almost all the processes inside the DC, because you think okay, you can have people packing 2 meters apart, and you can have people picking 2 meters apart. That is less of a challenge than having the canteen made so that you can, you've got the people, one person per table, and each table 2 meters apart, unless they already live together. And the toilets, you have 3 stalls, but you can't have 3 people, so you can only allow one person into the room. So we're really strict about it, because that's the number one priority. But obviously, when you're picking and packing in a warehouse, it's a job you cannot do from home. So we've been able to empty the warehouses of anyone who can work from home, but we are slower and much less productive. We're bringing forward IT functionality and that kind of thing that will enable us to kind of spread people out even further and open up new different stations. But it certainly does have an impact on productivity when you need people to physically move stuff.
Sure. It's been a learning curve, I think, even as a consumer and having to socially distance in supermarkets. I find it almost impossible, because those spaces have not been created with that in mind. So when we get to the point of non-food stores opening, there might be some restrictions in terms of how many people can go into a store, and social distancing within shops themselves. And I know that Melissa had a question for Adam in that respect, in terms of what we'll do when we start opening, because I want to move on to the Chinese market now. So Melissa,
as we come out of this kind of period of lockdown, or even later, when we're sort of back to some sense of normality, are you seeing any techniques coming through from China as to how people are being driven in store to shop? Any engagement techniques, any any digital kind of techniques that they're using to kind of hook people in and then drive them in store?
one of the interesting parts of the job at the moment is advising UK brands, UK retailers on what they can learn from Chinese retailers and start to implement here at home. When all this happened last time around in SARS back in 2003, there were two Chinese retailers who used that crisis as a major opportunity to kind of shift and pivot their business. And those two retailers were Alibaba and Jingdong. Now, of course, those two companies are the third and fourth biggest internet companies in the world, behind only Amazon and Google. What we've seen in China is a kind of a fast-tracked kind of pivot to digital in a number of different ways, and there's been some really, really innovative case studies of this happening. So shoppertainment is a big category at the moment, so live streaming to get people both shopping online and in store as well. Some really big brands who previously would have turned their nose up at this kind of marketing and sales technique are now kind of going down that route. Louis Vuitton being the prime example. They would usually never go anywhere near anything like this, but they launched their first live streamed e-commerce just a couple of weeks ago. And other brands that have looked for innovative ways of partnering with other retailers. So there's a Sinopec, which is a petrol station, has been partnering up with local fashion brands and agriculture brands to sell products in a contactless manner. So you kind of rock up to pick up your petrol, and while you're doing that, you pay via the app, and somebody comes and puts your products in the back of the car, all seamless, all contactless. And I think that contactless nature of things is something that people are going to be keenly aware of for months to come now. And that social distancing, even once measures start to be lifted here in the UK, it's something psychological. I think people are going to still want to maintain a little bit of distance.
There's been a lot of talk about revenge spending in China. So is that actually true, or is it holding up, or
Yeah, the revenge shopper. It's somewhat of a phenomenon, and it swings and roundabouts. Like of course, there was a huge spike in e-commerce spend in the days and weeks immediately after quarantines were lifted. Some of that has dropped off again, but there's some really, really positive signs as well. Consumer sentiment is bouncing back, by the day. Basically, if you look at all the survey data that's coming out, Hermes just launched a new store last weekend or the weekend before. They did $2.7 million in one day. It was just this huge roaring success, people sharing, talking about it online, live streaming themselves going around the store. So it is, in some cases it's a kind of flash in the pan thing, but there is something really there as well, I think.
And I think what you do is going to be crucial for brands in the medium term, because a lot of those luxury Chinese shops that would come to the UK and visit stores, they may be not able to do that, and one of the only routes to market then will be e-commerce for Western brands to be able to sell to those customers. Just quickly, can you tell us about some of the webinars that you've been running?
3 or 4 weeks ago now, back when the first week when we were in lockdown, we just decided that I was going to do some of my own live streaming. So we've been running webinars 3 times a week from this chair right here, and I just every topic, every day is a different topic. It's all done unscripted, no PowerPoint, no notes or anything, and it's meant to be a kind of crash course in all things digital and all things China. So for individuals that want to learn a bit more about the market, learn about how to get into the market, and crucially learn how to kind of pivot towards the market as well, which we've been pushing brands to do.
And you've been in business now for your agency 6 years, isn't it?
Right,
and in that time, you've helped brands like Chelsea, Fortnum & Mason and Bowden understand the Chinese market. And you've had I just wanted to get a sense from you, like what it's like as an agency founder and owner. Like, what do your days look like now, and what are your concerns from a business perspective?
Sure. I mean, me personally, I was the kind of roaming salesperson, so I was always out, talking to people. And so, from a personal standpoint, the biggest difference has been that I'm grounded. From a business perspective, we went through a few days at the beginning of the crisis where we were a little bit worried, a bit concerned. We weren't sure, and it's just lack of visibility, not really knowing where things are going over the coming months. The measures that were announced by the Chancellor were obviously very welcome. We've been lucky in that we haven't actually needed to access any finance. We've only furloughed one of our team members. Everybody else is still full-time, in fact, busier than ever. And one of the really kind of heartening things for us, and something that I'm personally proud of as well, is that actually now we're busier than ever and helping so many brands with this kind of pivot to China. Retail here has dried up to such an extent, and if we're being realistic, we're about to head into a very, very deep recession, and we don't know how long that's going to last. And so a lot of brands now, the smart brands, the ones that want to be Alibaba and JD in the future, are thinking about, okay, how can we really rethink our kind of global retail strategy, and that pivot to China, pivot to markets where there is going to be growth in the coming months and years, is the smart way to go, in my opinion. So we've been helping a lot of brands with that. It's been good fun.
And Claire as well. The first 6 months of the year is when brands typically look to find new warehousing partners. How are you dealing with that? Because I know that that's one of your responsibilities, is for bringing brands on board into your business. So how are things working in the short term when brands can't do site visits and things?
It's been interesting, because our initial assumption, obviously we've learned a lot in the last 4 weeks, we all have. Our initial assumption was that every single company that was talking to us would put the project on hold. And that has been the case, but about 50%, but the other 50% are very much wanting to press ahead.
I've asked everybody to tell us what book they're reading in lockdown or plan to read, and I myself will be reading this, which is Quiet by Susan Cain. Now, you can't see it because that's part of the charm of the book. It's a book about introversion, and as an introvert myself, it's interesting to learn more about the psyche behind myself and how introverts fit into a world where extroversion is seen as the norm. Melissa, what book are you reading?
I read all the time, so I'm always scouring the internet or second-hand bookshops for kind of adult adventure books. I'm a bit of an armchair adventurer, so I'm reading The Curve of Time, and this is a story of a woman who was widowed in 1927, and she used to take her 5 children through the summer on a boat that was only 25 feet. So there was 6 of them on a 25-foot boat, and she used to explore the coastal waters of British Columbia and the adventures they had. So it's all about resilience and ingenuity, which is ironically a little bit appropriate for now, but it's an amazing book.
Lorna?
Mine is John Fowles, The Magus. So this for me is actually a reread. So I first read this about 25 years ago, lying on a beach in Thailand when I was travelling. And the things about it that I remember was that using such powerful and evocative language, which is a place that in lockdown I just want to go. I just want to be reading really evocative and powerful material, and also just to be able to remember the good times that I had when I was travelling, because I don't know when I'm next going to be able to go. So that's fine.
Kevin?
I'm not reading a book. I can read, by the way.
You have to be different, don't you?
Yeah, no, I can read, and I'm a short attention span, so but the most highbrow thing I could find was this. Now, there's 198 pages to make this model. My son bought it 4 years ago for Christmas, done about 3 pages, pulled all of the bits into the box, so they come in labelled bags, and decided he didn't want to do it anymore. So I'm spending my time in the evenings making that.
Claire?
So, well, speaking of travelling and taking books with you, I obviously I'm also a thwarted traveller at the moment. There's a book which I have been reading, and I'm about halfway through, and I've been reading it for, I think, 3 years. It's called A General Theory of Love, and it's by 3 scientists who, one is a medical doctor, one's a psychologist, and the idea was it's an exploration about why we love, how we physically, what goes on with our bodies to cause us to fall in love, and how important that is for society, and why society is kind of letting us down, and how the structure of Western society doesn't help us love each other. But the problem is, these scientists are really, really clever, and I love the idea of it, but I'm not clever enough. So that's why it's only half read, and it's been to so many different countries with me, and from the amount of coffee cups and stains on it. But in the meantime, I do also scoop books up along the way while on my Kindle.
What about you, Paul?
Well, I, by the side of my bed, have about 20 books, and I read about 3 pages of each one each time. So they've all been there for years and half read. But I got this book, which is called Forbes' Greatest Business Stories of All Time, just before lockdown, from a friend of mine who I swapped. I gave him Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, which, if anyone wants to read a really good business book, that is it. And because it's warts and all. But this one's really interesting because it's all about a lot of the famous businesses, particularly American ones, but literally about the resilience of the leaders in them, how they were often, like Disney was told he was wrong, and you can't do this, you can't do that, or they were in the Depression and this was happening. What were they going to do? They signed over the wrong rights to the wrong cinema deal and lost everything and had to start again. So I always look for the sort of little nuggets in that mean that you're doing the right thing almost, so that keep going on what you're doing. You've decided to create a brand or run a business or an agency, and literally keep ploughing your own furrow rather than listening to the naysayers. So,
Adam?
Yeah, it has to be something China related, obviously. So this
You've got quite a few behind you. So.
Yeah.
This is one that I love to dip in and out of, and it's been getting a good amount more usage recently. It's called The Book of Swindles. It's a translated book from the Ming Dynasty, so from the 16th century, and it's basically it's a collection of little tales of, they're all only 2 or 3 pages long, of scams and scandals. Just to give you a little hint of the kind of stuff, some of the titles here, things like swindling the salt commissioner while disguised as Taoists, or sticking a plaster in the eyes to steal a silver ingot, or inciting a friend to commit adultery and swindling away his land. So it's meant as a kind of guide, basically how to avoid being scammed. So I quite like it, and I think there's a lot of relevance today as well.
And finally, Karen.
Well, I've chosen a story. I've got lots of books by my bed as well, and I've been charging through them. And this one I finished about 3 weeks ago. Actually, it's been by my bed for a while. It's A Gentleman in Moscow, and I guess it's quite sort of pertinent now because it's about a count who's accused of a crime and is sentenced to live his life in the Moscow hotel, in the Metropole Hotel in Moscow. And it starts in about, 1920, something like that, and it runs all the way through until the 60s, I think. He's still there, and how Russia changes as he goes, and how, the hotel is obviously, I've never been to Moscow, but the hotel sounds amazing and looks stunning in any photos that you find of it, and all the little secret back passages that he runs down and the friends he meets. So it's got some really lovely descriptions in it, and it's just a really lovely book and rather on trend, shall I say.
Brilliant. It's always good to know what books people read, because it gives a different dimension and about who we all are and what we were thinking at this time. So it's been really great to speak to you all and find out how things are changing for you in the different parts of retail commerce.
Thanks, Leon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.